maybe we're in adolescence as a field. I don't even know where we'd say, but there's so much more we can do to help people, and we're going to help people. It's just going through the growing pains, I think.
I think so too.
Yeah. So now coming back again, because you have, speaking about growing, we are able to now address how people are feeling, their thoughts, and how others might term mental health issues through ACT. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about what ACT's about?
Sure. Yeah. So ACT is acceptance and commitment therapy is what it was originally called, and that's when it was developed by behavior analytic psychologist Steve Hayes, among others. It was developed as a behavior analytic approach to psychotherapy, and it was developed for treating anxiety disorders, depression, substance abuse challenges, chronic pain, things like that. Areas of work that typically are not the purview of behavior analysis, but it was developed by folks who were hardcore behavior analysts, basic researchers even, but also clinical psychologists, licensed psychologists. They developed it for use by psychologists because they wanted to do exactly what you're talking about, which is get the science of behavior out there, outside of our little field, get it out into the general community more. And so their target was more clinical mental health professionals. And so they developed this stuff. It's a behavior analytic approach to teaching people new ways of responding to their own aversive private events. And so, obviously we all have private events. We have thoughts, feelings, bodily sensations that show up. When those tend to be aversive, we do what mammals naturally do, which is choose avoidance moves, right? And so if we're feeling stressed, maybe we choose alcohol or social media instead of going out and going for a run or having an honest conversation with our partner or spending time with family, whatever it is. And so, of course, humans choose avoidance. And so ACT is about teaching 6 sort of interlocking or interdependent skill repertoires, or you could think of them as sort of self-management habits for new ways of responding to our own aversive private events rather than choosing avoidance, reflecting on what we really care about, like what sources of positive reinforcement are available to us, and then choosing a specific socially meaningful overt behavior directed towards those sources of positive reinforcement. And so if you want to use the ACT language, you can say values. Values are just big, verbally constructed positive reinforcers in our life. So for me, my values are family is number one, supporting my students, creating a context for my students and my colleagues to be successful. I really love adventure. I got to have adventure in my life. So I get out going rock climbing and hiking and stuff like that in the woods. I like to be in the wild. Different for everybody. There's no right or wrong. It's just whatever sources of sort of verbally constructed positive reinforcement are most important to you in your life. And so ACT is about helping people build self-management habits that help them spend more time doing stuff that they care about and spend less time engaging in avoidance behavior.
I like to think about it. Thank you for breaking that down. And so I actually think about, and correct me if you think I'm wrong about this, but I think I frame it in 2 ways. Like what I always try to do is help people pair new knowledge with existing knowledge, right? So for behavior analysts or, those who work at schools that are familiar with like FBAs, it almost feels like you're teaching people to do a functional behavior assessment on themselves, right? As
absolutely right.
Yeah, they're thinking about that because you're really observing, knowing your reinforcers. We do that with FBA, right? And you're looking at, all right, this is a precursor to, the antecedent to this unproductive behavior. And all right, we got to figure out a replacement behavior. And so, and I also look at it as almost like instead of social validity, it's like self-validity, right? Because then once you know these things, you're like checking in, making sure, am I doing the right thing that are aligned with these reinforcers or not? So I think we can pair that with some existing things for people. And I think it's powerful. Now, they have this ACT hexaflex, right? And then they have the ACT matrix. I gravitate greatly towards the ACT matrix. When I look at the hexaflex, one of the problems that I've seen with, and I have my BSW, I have my MSW, I came out of a mental health background, right? But I see that there's a lot of big words in there and it confuses people. And it's like, what's this stuff mean? And when I look at the hexaflex, I feel that way about it. It feels like it's gravitating back in that area. But when I look at the ACT matrix, and I was very fortunate enough to write an article, not a journal article, but just an article with Dr. Kevin Polk on the ACT matrix and use of fighting, right? How to use fighters. Yeah. Super nice guy, man. It was great. I'm like, this is simple, right? And I believe that, the mental health issues are so prevalent in education, not just, as I mentioned, the students, but the educators as well, that there's not enough mental health professionals to go around to support the growing needs. So what do we need to do? Well, we need to put the tools in their hands. And we got to make sure that the tools are simple, because complexity is the enemy of execution, sustainability, and scalability, right? And so the Hexaflex just seems too sophisticated for me. It's aversive. Okay. It's like, the arrangement of, but when you look at the Ag Matrix, it's like it's 4 squares, like playing 4 squares, right? It's me in the middle. Yeah. And so, what are your thoughts about it? Could education, would it be viable for students to use this, and educators to use it, and school leaders to use it, as shared values? What are your thoughts on applying that?
Yeah, for sure. I have found the Hexaflex to be really useful, but I will say, and I say this often when I give trainings on ACT, it took me 6 years, maybe 8 years to really grappling with the Hexaflex until I felt like I understood it behavior analytically. And then I felt like, oh, okay, this is real behavior analysis. Now I'm allowed to ACT and do it, right? So that was a barrier. And if someone had shown me the Hexaflex in, let's say, 2001, 2002, that would have bought me like...